Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Forward DFW. Together with the Dallas Morning News, I'm Ron Corning. Today, we are shining a spotlight on the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas and the organization's work in Austin at the Capitol. On March 1st of this year, they had a day at the Capitol. It is a day of advocacy on your behalf, something they've done now for almost 15 years. But the United Way doesn't only advocate for you, they advocate with you. And we'll dive a little deeper into that coming up here in the next little bit. Stephanie Mace is joining us. She's the Vice President of Strong Communities for the United Way of Dallas. And Stephanie, I just want to start here by taking our viewers through what your legislative priorities are for 2023. Housing stability, increasing housing stability for low-income workers. So we have a need for more workers in the workforce, and yet we're not accommodating them with housing as the price of housing goes up.
Correct. We're looking at 211 data and see that over 34% of individuals that are calling 211 and needing assistance, the majority of those callers are needing housing, affordable housing, and shelter. And so we know that this is a huge need in our community. And so one of the areas that we're focused on, like you said, is housing stability for low-income workers. Kids are going to do better in school if they have a stable home. Individuals that have a stable home are also more likely to keep a job. Evictions is the number one reason why families become homeless. And so, we really want to try and keep people in their homes, but also ensuring that it's not at the expense of landlords.
Well, I also would think that instability in housing creates stress on families.
Correct.
And lends itself to issues of domestic violence and child abuse, which happens to be as well one of your legislative priorities. Those two are closely tied, are they not?
They are. They very are. One of the programs that United Way leads is the HOPES, Healthy Outcomes Through Early Prevention, and another one is called Texas Home Visiting Program. In both cases, paraprofessionals go into the home and provide support to families through making them aware of resources that are available in the community, providing them with parenting tips, helping them to understand what are their child's milestones that their kid is trying to accomplish. And so providing them with that education, that really helps parents go a long way to hopefully reduce their stress. And that's one way that we also make kids to be better prepared for kindergarten. And so we're wanting to scale those programs. We're asking the legislature provide an extra $48 million. And with that, we're hoping throughout the state, 22,000 more individuals are able to receive those services.
We've also done a lot of work to lift the stigma that exists around mental health, especially among young people, to acknowledge maybe they're struggling, to ask for help. But if the help isn't there, it ends up being a dead-end proposition, right? So you're advocating for more programs for young people who are dealing with issues of mental health. Are you seeing any progress there? Are you hopeful about that?
We are. We know that a lot of school districts and teachers are also asking for expansion of these services in the schools. We know that having mental health services in schools reduces the parents having to take off of work. It reduces the need for transportation. It keeps kids in school throughout the entire day. There are a couple of efforts this legislative session. One would just allow school districts to be able to be reimbursed by Medicaid for the mental health services that they're able to provide to Medicaid eligible students. And this would allow students that maybe aren't at a crisis level, but maybe are just having some anxiety, depression, to also be able to access services.
So you're getting ahead of it. You're trying to get ahead of it so that the situation doesn't get worse. Finally, I find this interesting because all of these issues really kind of are wrapped up in an entanglement, each one influencing the other. Predatory lending with payday loans. There are laws in place that can protect a consumer who's desperate to try and really make ends meet. Some of those interest rates, 64%. It's loan sharking, really. Is there a risk here that some of these lenders will be allowed to kind of operate outside of some of these restrictions? And what are we doing about that?
Thank you. Yes, this is an issue that United Way has been working on for over 12 years. We helped to adopt a city ordinance back in 2011 to put the first of its kind city ordinance on payday and auto title lending practices. And we just want to make sure that people are able to pay back the loan in a reasonable amount of time and not to continue to extend or renew those loans, sometimes for years on end. And so the interest rates could be up to 600, 500% interest. There's a lot of talk this year at the legislature around preemption, and so reducing local control. And one of the areas that there's been a lot of talk around is eliminating the payday and auto title lending ordinances, which right now is in 49 cities. The first city that adopted it was Dallas, and right now 11 million individuals are covered by the same ordinance.
And I sense that the people who run these operations know that the more people struggle with housing, the more people struggle with medical costs, the more vulnerable they are. That provides an opportunity for them to get their claws in, really. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yes. Individuals that don't have a living wage or can't meet their general expenses every month. That's usually where they go.
Yeah. Exploiting poverty, essentially.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you and I are going to continue this conversation after we meet someone who actually has been an advocate on the front lines, a citizen really who just felt this was their place to make a difference and perhaps inspire others to do the same. And how can you get involved? We're going to let you know that right now. We're back right after this. Visit UnitedWayDallas.org to sign up for advocacy alerts and be part of our efforts to improve access to education, income, and health this legislative session. Welcome back, everyone. It is time to meet an advocate for the United Way, someone who gives a voice to those who might be otherwise voiceless. Robbie Luxbacher is joining me now, and she was part of this legislative day at the Capitol, also 2 other times. So you've really been part of the process for a while now. How does it feel for you to know that in being a part of this, in going to Austin, that you really are, as I said, representing those who otherwise may not have a voice?
It's hard to express how meaningful it really is to one, understand and be part of the legislative process to help those who are the most needy in our North Texas community, and who are working jobs, are living, at a level that they themselves can't go and advocate for themselves. And through United Way, that's what United Way is supporting. United Way's programs in education, income, and health are aligned that way to make long-term change. And then the legislative process, it's very meaningful to know I can go advocate and inform and sway, hopefully, legislators to make changes that will create long-term change and long-term opportunities for our most needy.
So there were 24 of you this year.
Yes.
And you met with 30
legislators. Right.
Of those 30,
or their staff.
Or their staff. Of those 30 meetings, were there some that were disappointing and others that were inspiring?
Yes and yes.
Okay. Let's talk about those that were inspiring. And by that, you were well received, or you went in thinking this is going to be a challenge and left thinking we had a breakthrough moment?
Well, I'll give you 2. One that's the former. We were well received. We didn't get to meet with the senator, but we did meet with a very knowledgeable chief of staff who understood the issues. We were very aligned on many of the issues. They shared information with us. We always go with very detailed information, and United Way has the ability, if a legislator is interested in a certain issue or wants more information, that we can provide more information to them. So that's sort of a really inspiring, yes, we're aligned, we're providing more information, and they're giving us more information. And so that's one type of a very inspirational. The other one that I'd like to talk about is we went into a freshman representative's office. So it's just elected, first term. They're drinking from a fire hose as they come to the legislative session, right? And they have a small office.
And then United Way shows up and just cranks the water up a little bit more.
A little bit more, but in a really important way. We didn't have an appointment. We were doing what we call a flyby. We're going to poke our heads in the office, say who we are, see if anybody will talk to us. So we get welcomed into the office and we sit down and we're talking to someone who is frankly just taking notes, doesn't know anything about our issues, but is taking notes. But in the back of the room is the senior policy analyst for that representative, which we did not know. But as she's listening to us, she's hearing us provide factual information, provide evidence-based solutions to some of the issues. And she realizes my representative is really interested in these issues and came up to talk to us and asked us for information because as a new, working for a new freshman representative, how do I get information? How do I help prepare my representative? These, we think they just know it all, but they don't. And so us coming in and her realizing here are people who are here with real information about programs that matter to us. That was a real win. We all came away from it feeling very, inspired.
Well, I was going to say that's another inspiring story, that somebody who's new to the scene would be open to understanding and want to learn more because, as you say, there's a lot of information coming at them. The disappointment, where does that lie?
Disappointment, and I don't know if it's disappointment, because anytime you
or is it just a feeling like, okay, this is business as usual, as we often hear.
They'll listen to us, but they're not really interested.
And you can tell they're not interested.
You could tell by whether they ask questions,
they're polite, but they're not engaged.
That's exactly right.
And how do you reconcile that? Because that's not an easy wall to bring down.
It's not an easy wall.
If ever.
Right. And you recognize some walls you aren't going to bring down, even when you think a topic makes so much sense.
And is so important to their own constituents for the district they represent.
Exactly. But they may say to you, yes, that's all important, but this legislative session, we're really focused on these issues. And there's a lot of issues, if you look at the legislature, there are a lot of issues, but you'll get that. And that's disappointing. And if you had a whole day of that, it would make for a very difficult day at the Capitol, but we don't. You'll get a couple of those. But most of the time, because we go in, I think one of the things United Way does, and we do right there, is I think there's a lot of people that come in, they're very passionate, they don't have a lot to back up their positions, they just want to go talk to their legislator. But when we go in, we're talking about evidence-based solutions.
Yeah. Do you think you humanize it though too, even though you come in armed with information?
We definitely try to humanize it because we're always talking about the people this is impacting. For example, this year, and we each take a topic, and I took home visitation as the topic I really wanted to talk about because it's one I feel very passionate about. And these home visitation programs and funding them are so
home visitation for seniors, home visitation for
good
foster children?
For families.
For families in crisis.
So the one we really were focused on was following a woman who's pregnant and then continuing on with visiting nurses or professionals coming into the home and staying with that family after the delivery of the child to give them support.
So families that are dealing with a crisis, lack of access to health care and
or
so forth.
Just don't have the means or knowledge. And what this does is they go into the home, they make sure maternal health, because maternal health is a really big issue. Women not after childbirth, not getting the care they need. And
with our medical advancements, you wonder why
that happened. But if you've got a nurse coming into the home on a regular basis, they're going to catch those issues. Most of child abuse isn't the horrific stories we hear. It's really neglect. And a lot of neglect is due to lack of knowledge or stress in the family. And if you have somebody coming in who can give them access to programs, help teach them how to care for their new child, you start at the very beginning and you prevent child abuse.
And the science bears that out. I know you know this.
Absolutely.
That if you don't have that emotional connection and physical touch in those first, is it 14, 16 months?
Yes. Yeah. And how to teach your child and what child development is. And then also to see what else is stressing this family and how can I help provide them other services that might be stressing them.
And you feel like you're making progress.
Yes. I think we are making progress on that issue.
Well, the United Way isn't letting up.
Nope.
As we said earlier, whether it's during this day at the Capitol.
Right.
or year-round, be it a legislative session or not, which is an important point. And you framed it really well off camera when we were talking. You said this is just another avenue for long-term change.
Yes, this is just advocacy, meeting with legislators is just another avenue for long-term change.
Just one other avenue, because it takes many.
It takes many
roads lead.
Many roads lead to change. And of course, the first road is getting out there and voting.
Yeah. Voting is very important. And the United Way has also made sure that that first step to making sure your voice is heard is something that you can really embrace and have the knowledge to do. And we're going to give people information on that. Robbie, thank you for the work you've done with United Way.
It's been my pleasure. I've benefited from it. And thank you for listening and taking up this topic.
We're happy to do it. And to that point, learning more about voting, here's how you do it. For a comprehensive guide on voting, the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas works closely with the League of Women Voters. Go to vote411.org. We are back with Stephanie Mace, the VP of Strong Communities for United Way of Metropolitan Dallas, wrapping up our conversation about their advocacy in the community. And we just talked, Stephanie, about voting. We sent people to the voting guide that you recommend people sort of delve into to get a sense of where they can go in their communities, how to register, make sure they're active on the polls and on the voting rolls, I should say. That really is the first step, is it not, to making sure your voice is heard?
It is. You want people to be an informed voter before they go to the polls. You want to make sure that you know what you're voting on, right? Either propositions or candidates. So communities where you see higher rates of voter turnout, you also see higher rates of education, better health outcomes, and then higher rates of employment. And so that is all leads back to the quality of life that we're really wanting to get back at.
You also made a point earlier that I think really, really resonated with me, and that is, when you pick up the phone and you call that legislative office, you don't have to worry about being armed with the evidence. You don't have to have stats. You're not going to get into a debate with your lawmaker. You're just letting them know this is an issue that I'm concerned about. They have to take note of that. So it does count. It literally counts.
Yes, it's somebody's job to answer the phone in every legislative office, and they keep a tally of the issues that people call about, if they're for and against a specific bill. And at United Way, we provide you with that information. We do all of the tracking. There are 8,000 bills that the legislature is considering right now. We've identified about 175, but we're only sending out action alerts around about the top 6. And so once again, alignment with education, income, and health. We send you a script. We send you the phone numbers, and we ask you to call within a day or two, because that's a critical time when we need those offices to hear from you. Yeah,
that's you just make it easy. So it's a way you're sort of an advocate by proxy, where someone can use their own voice, literally use their own voice, but be armed with some of the information that you all provide. And then you show up for this legislative session and just sort of reinforce the point on these important issues.
Yeah. So I think Robbie and our other advocates really help to inform our elected officials about these key issues, really rising to the top, some of these priorities. And so now we're asking them to continue to prioritize this throughout the legislation by keeping it top of mind. Yeah.
And Robbie said something else very important. This is just one avenue, because you all are working from various directions, various avenues to try to converge in a way that is most meaningful.
So we only have 140 days every other year to really focus and push legislation. And so we focus on building relationships with elected officials during the interim before we ask them to vote on a particular issue. So we try to provide them with education on what's going on in their community, on our programs and initiatives in advance. But there is also change in elected officials, right? Mm-hmm. So doing the best that we can to keep them informed.
Yeah, and you've changed minds and changed votes among that legislative body.
So.
Yeah, there's evidence of that. Stephanie, thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us for Forward DFW. Together with the Dallas Morning News, I'm Ron Corning. We will see you next time. One final reminder, visit unitedwaydallas.org to sign up for advocacy alerts and be part of our efforts to improve access to education, income, and health this legislative session.